So here's the thing about storytelling. This term is used and abused in so many ways, to the point that it's actually deterring people right now because it sounds like fluff. But to me, storytelling is all about engagement. At the end of the day, whether you're coming into an investor meeting or a client meeting, what we need to remember is that we have an audience in front of us and we need to bring relevancy into the conversation. And the best way, and it's scientifically proven, to connect with the person in front of you is to wrap that information, to wrap that relevancy in your pitch in the form of story. Now, where most people get it wrong is that they're trying to sell stories. And my approach is don't sell stories, tell stories, and allow your story to do the selling for you.
Moti Elkaim, welcome to 20-Minute Leaders. Thank you so much for joining me all the way from New York, right?
From New Jersey, just across the river. But yeah, I appreciate it. Love being here with you, and it's good seeing you again.
Fantastic to see you as well. We met last time in a webinar that you hosted talking about resiliency and impact of the war. And it was with phenomenal partners. I was honored to take part, and I really appreciate you taking the time now to join me in telling a little bit about the story of Moti Elkaim and telling the problems that you're seeing and the opportunities you're seeing in working with entrepreneurs and founders and really taking the amazing work that they're doing, but telling it in a way that is understood, is compelling, and makes sense for also investors. So I'm looking forward to diving deep into it. Right before we get started into all of that, Moti, tell me a little bit about yourself, as a person, a bit about your background, and then we'll dive into the problem space.
Absolutely. So, throughout my career, I was involved with tech companies and managing various marketing teams in the capacity of VP of Marketing, CMO, led those teams from freemium sales all the way to unicornism in some point. And what I realized very early on in startups is that content and storytelling is key. Because at the end of the day, you're coming in with a groundbreaking product, a groundbreaking team, a lot of innovative work that is going into uncharted territories. And in every aspect of the work, you really have to sell your vision, whether it is to get the investors on board or the first clients on board. And that is what really drew me to the world of tech. And after 10 years of leading different marketing teams, I've decided to launch my agency, Atlantic Brands. And Atlantic Brands is focused on helping emerging companies, emerging founders with investor pitching, helping them fine-tune their storyline, their pitch, the way they deliver their vision into investors. And the other part of that agency is fractional CMO services. But today, we're going to focus on the storytelling part.
Phenomenal. I love it. For you, storytelling, public speaking, what does that mean to you?
So here's the thing about storytelling. This term is used and abused in so many ways, to the point that it's actually deterring people right now because it sounds like fluff. But to me, storytelling is all about engagement. At the end of the day, whether you're coming into an investor meeting or a client meeting, what we need to remember is that we have an audience in front of us and we need to bring relevancy into the conversation. And the best way, and it's scientifically proven, to connect with the person in front of you is to wrap that information, to wrap that relevancy in your pitch in the form of story. Now, where most people get it wrong is that they're trying to sell stories. And my approach is don't sell stories, tell stories, and allow your story to do the selling for you. So storytelling is all about connecting and engaging with the person in front of you.
Mm-hmm. And so what is the challenge of actually doing that from specifically on a founder perspective? What is the challenge of getting the story and then telling it right?
Well, it's all about understanding context, right? A lot of times I see brilliant founders who have developed brilliant solutions, brilliant tech solutions, who are coming in and they found themselves on the understanding that pitching the product, pitching the technology is what is going to sell the business at the end of it. But the challenge is that's not what investors are looking for in early stage companies. They really are looking for the first connection with the founder, to see that we have one, investor-founder fit, two, that we have founder market fit, and two, that we have investor market fit. Now, the ability to connect all of those points in the triangle of fit in fundraising, you can only do by really engaging the investor in front of you to understand your purpose. If they don't understand your purpose, if they cannot connect to you, your technology, your market size, and your traction are irrelevant, because those are secondary if they don't have the ability to fully understand why and what it is that you're doing. And this is where storytelling comes into play.
I completely get that. And I think the natural question stems, founders spend all their time, day in, day out, nighttime dreaming about their fit, how necessary they are, how passionate they are. This is their, you would expect the founders and entrepreneurs to be the best in the world at telling their story. So why is it that when it comes to the moment of truth, sometimes they may not do it as well as they could?
The answer to that is very simple, and that is focus. As a founder, and you know it as a founder who raised successfully, and congratulations on that again, the answer to that is focus. There are so many things that are going into the founder's head. The opportunities, the risk, the need to raise money. And all of those weights that are bearing on their shoulders are forcing them to drive a lot of information into the presentation rather than understanding in very simple terms what it is that we do and what it is that we do best. And when you have the ability to focus on that, you can craft your storyline to build up to that inflection point of this is why we're awesome. And by adding too many layers, feature dumping yourself, your product onto an investor, you're diluting your value proposition. So rule number one, and I like to call it the rule of one in pitching, is that you have one audience, one problem, one solution. Keep that in mind, because investors at the end of the day are ordinary people like you and me. They don't have the ability to process gazillions of pieces of information. They want the information to be simple enough so they'll be able to go and sell it back to their partners. So keep your pitch focused. That's the biggest challenge that I see that is killing founders today in their pitch.
Amazing. So where do you fit into this? So before we talk about how you work with founders and entrepreneurs and what you do, how did you decide that this is what you want to be doing with your skills? Why this problem for you, and why are you the right person here?
So it's quite a fascinating story. I was always drawn to public speaking, pitching, standing in front of the crowd. I got my master's from Columbia University in strategic communications. I stayed to teach their public speaking after my graduation. And one day, while I was a CMO at Copilot, a person from my network reached out and said, listen, Moti, something is changing in the market. The way we pitch is no longer working. I'm not able to penetrate the threshold. It's just, there is something happening in the market. Those were the early signs of 2023 and the tech market going down. And what I've noticed is that founder, like many, many founders in those days, and until today actually, follow the traditional pitch deck template. And I said, okay, if 500 people are pitching the same, we need to approach this differently. We need to approach pitching not from a product and a selling perspective, but from an engagement perspective. You have an audience in front of you. So the first step you need to understand is that you have to connect to the audience. If you're not connecting to the audience, your message is not going to go through. And the best way to do it is with a story, and then you have to build the layers of the pitch on top of that. So by helping that founder raise $4.5 million with nothing but a presentation, with nothing but a piece of paper in their hand. They were pre-product, pre-revenue actually. That really got me hooked on this niche of investor pitching. And I started doing it with one, then the second one came and the third, to the point that I decided to launch the agency as a full-time thing.
So tell me about the first one, or one of the very first ones. So what was sort of the real experience you had, which at the end of it you said, wow, this is a real problem and I'm pretty good at this. I can actually get results. And this is something that I want to now scale and do more.
Yeah. So I remember the first founder came to my house. We sat on the sofa and she said, I'm really shy. I don't know if I can pitch. This is the first time pitching. And she was a senior executive in previous companies and led those companies to massive growth. And the first thing we tried to understand is, what was your inspiration you found in this company? And she told me her inspiration. And she told me how she lived through that pain. And I said, well, what we have to do first is make you relive that pain through your investor. Because once the investor realizes that you live through the pain that you're pitching, that ticks a green light in their hand. They know you have what it takes to drive this home. And I remember she called me. She went to Israel to meet with an investor. And she said, Moti, we met for coffee and the investment is in. And I said, that's phenomenal. That's actually better than I ever anticipated. But the idea is that whatever inspired you to start your company, it's most likely to inspire an investor to invest in you. And when you're able to tap into it, that is key. Now, the second understanding is that I found starting from the very first companies I started working with, is that sometimes in order to get the business, you don't have to talk business. Meaning you have to achieve the connection first. A lot of time I see founders coming in with 300 billion tabs, unbelievable Excel sheets that are also documented, but Excel sheets don't sell vision. You have to sell your vision first.
Amazing. So this leads me to asking, so what are the common pitfalls? You just mentioned one that you see founders make when crafting their stories, that you're looking at them and saying, okay, everybody, this is great, but you're missing, these huge, important elements which will hinder your objectives here. So you already touched on one of them, which I think is important to double down on, is about, how do you actually get them to buy into the vision, not just the large TAM, which every pitch deck should have, obviously.
Well, I actually disagree with it. I think the TAM should not be in every pitch deck. But we'll touch on the TAM for a second. The first thing is that, and especially in emerging companies, we have to understand that investors.
By the way, we didn't have a number on our TAM on ours. So,
see, exactly, and part of the reason you probably are a smart founder who's able to successfully raise in today's market. So one, look, we have to understand that investors invest in founders first. You can't break away from it. You have to accept that this is what they're looking for. Once you establish that, you need to focus your first 3 minutes of the presentation on your story. Let them connect to you because that's what they're looking for. Then layer the presentation on that. And where I see most founders make the mistake is the drive to the business opportunity. The business opportunity is worthless without the right founder. And investors are no longer dazzled by 300 billion TAMs. Now let's speak about it very openly. When it comes to TAM, there is not a single company in the Western world that was able to achieve TAM. Not Google, not Facebook, not Apple, not Microsoft, no one. You know why? Because when you achieve TAM, it means you're a monopoly. So one thing that I strongly recommend companies to do is come in with realistic projections of the sales that you can generate and the roadmap and the journey. Make sure that you're grounded. 2, after you've done your story right, know your numbers right. Story will get you the connection. Numbers will get you the validation. And this is where a lot of founders are falling. So once you got the investor hooked on you, now you need to show them that you really know the numbers. Don't just Google TAM, SAM, SAM numbers and come up with rough guesstimates. Build your go-to market in relation to the story that you created. Meaning, if I'm going after a certain business, how many of those do I have in the US market? And how many of those do I realistically know I can get in the next 2 years? There is no shame in saying we're not going to achieve $1 billion or $100 million in revenue in 2 years. No one is expecting you to do it in 2 years. Keep it grounded. And lastly, know exactly why you have the unfair advantage. And that is where we spoke about focus. Come in and understand what it is that makes you better in position to achieve those sales. It can be gazillion reasons. It has to be one that is elevating you above everyone else. Your product may have many features, but there is one reason why you are better than everyone else. So don't try to make a buffet or a burrito list of items by which you are a good investment. Just go for the focused one.
Interesting. So help me translate these ideas into more behaviors or attributes that then an investor would experience from a founder. For example, when I hear you talk about know your numbers, I hear about, I hear this attribute of groundedness and rigor that, it doesn't even matter necessarily what the numbers are. It's the fact that there is trust that this is a founder that is not just here to sell me on something, but they've done their work and that they believe in the research they've done and they're rigorous about it.
Exactly. That's a really good point. So if we're going to the numbers, right? And again, I see it all the time with founders have a need to speak about $1 billion market and $1 billion market. Okay, everyone is talking about $1 billion market. We wouldn't be here if we didn't think that we can make this company $1 billion company. That's the entire purpose of investing, right? We want to grow to a unicorn status. But I'll give you an example that illustrates it and how you can keep it grounded. I was able to raise money for Carbine, one of the companies I worked on, based on a dinner that I had with a really high net worth individual. And I explained to her in very simple terms, look, our solution is designed for 911 centers in the US. There are 8,000 911 centers in the US. At $100 per seat per month, at average of 12 seats per center, this is how much we think we can make in year 1, 2, or 3. So now there is logic behind the numbers. Don't use numbers to dazzle. This is where I go back to what I said before. Don't sell stories. Be very, very grounded in your pitch. It's a quality that many founders are shying away from, being grounded. They want to sell the big vision, the big dream. No, sell reality.
Right, and it's almost like you're not just selling the reality, assuming that the reality leads to a good business proposition, right? That is sort of table stakes. But and ideally, that's a logical process that everybody will say. Any sound investor who understands this market will say, "Yep, that makes sense." Now it's a question of sell them on your logic, sell them on your process, right? Sell them on your rigor.
Exactly. And they love to see your rigor. They love to see your hustle. They're looking for it. They love to see your grind. And what we also need to understand is that, look, the purpose of the first pitch, you're not going to get money in your pitch. You're not going to get money in that meeting. You need to understand that the purpose of the first pitch is, one, to connect to the investor, but you also need to remember that investor now needs to go and tell your story with conviction to his or her partners. And they need to make a decision together if they're going to invest in your company. Yep. So when they pitch you, they have to come up with grounded numbers. Everything has to connect from the vision to the numbers to the ask. if the numbers are not matching the vision, if the ask is not matching the numbers, if the numbers are not grounded, the investor is not going to cut through the threshold of his or her partners.
Yep.
So you're not positioning yourself for success if you're going for the dream. Sell the vision and make the vision a reality.
Phenomenal. I think that there's more. I mean, I'm sure we can take many of the pieces of advice that you're giving entrepreneurs in different modalities. We just here touched on the context of numbers and research, but I'm sure that there is also ways in which information is even presented vocally in the way that you're experiencing the person on a human level, that then translates down to more basic fundamental traits of a person that they would want to work with. And so I'm sure that there's many things we can come up with.
So many. And by the way, I'll just share it here. All of my methods of investor pitching and public speaking and engagement is available online. I share that data for free. So if you go to Medium and you look for Moti Elkaim, you look for my name, if you go on LinkedIn, you can see all of my principles on how to successfully pitch. But going to the small details of your tone and how to pitch, it's actually amazing sometimes to see brilliant founders, like really brilliant people. They standing in front of an investor and they look at the slide.
Yeah.
And it happens. And all of those things needs to be factored. So, but that's a different thing. I think the core of investor pitching is to understand one thing. First, you have to connect. Then you have to present the opportunity, the business argument as in context to the story you presented at the beginning. It's not a linear process where you go by problem, solution, traction, demo. Everything has to be layered together in order to create the right context.
I love it. Moti, thank you so much for coming, and thank you for sharing nuggets of your experience and obviously, so the Medium and LinkedIn, you have all the tools there, but I think that they get you to a certain level, and obviously the personal engagement then takes to a different level. So thank you again for being here. Excited to share this with everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you for having me.